I watch now, between innings, I watch the news. Only between innings.
Me too. Get your priorities straight.
He does too. He watches the news.
Yes, we're talking serious miracles here, folks.
That's right.
That's for sure.
Anyway, as I'm watching the news, particularly the last couple of days, with all of the upset that's going on with the refugees on the Mexican border, it becomes again so apparent how easy it is to polarize. And you hear one person after another expressing either the opinion that it's absolutely justified or there's no way to justify it. And it's almost like watching the little hate meter as it wobbles back and forth from one party to the next. And I'm reminded that how difficult it truly is for something that we care about deeply to be forgiven, truly forgiven. And yet, if we are to do more than just transfer hate, see it shifts from one place to another, isn't this a marvelous opportunity for us to do that? And then I'm reminded, this group right here, who better is equipped to step back, literally to step away from all of the angst and the anger and remind ourselves we only have the opportunity to see another child of God. Nothing more, nothing less than that. So how will we do that? Without forgiveness. Total, genuine forgiveness. How will we do that? I think it's impossible. So I wanted to ask you, before we get into the lessons that I'd like to take a look at today, I wanted to ask you if there's anyone here who has any reluctance for all of us to join together and take a stand on what's happening. And the stand that I would recommend is that we collectively remember to invite our God self into our mind at each and every opportunity that we feel called upon to make a judgment of any kind. And to look at this so-called crisis, and then by the ego's terms, I'm sure it is a crisis, but to look at it and recognize that it's a marvelous opportunity. Truly a marvelous opportunity for all of us. I also understand that there are times when I'm watching it and I can feel what I'm saying to you now, and there are other times when it just seems to go out the window, and there I am in judgment. Yet every time that does happen, and I go within and say, I'm sure sorry, I blew it again. Brother says, never forget. Never forget. The only two options you have are to see the truth or to recognize that nothing is happening. And that's such a relief to know that I can screw up 20 times a day, 100 times a day. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because our story is still a story. And beneath it all is the truth and the love of God, which we are never going to change. It's never going to be in doubt. Nothing can ever happen to it because it is the will of God. So, I want to ask each of you to see if there's something you'd like to chat about, like to bring up, like to some help with, perhaps. We can always call on Brother to help us with it.
I would, Tom. And that, you say the opportunity, and I'd like help with that notion of opportunity, and because it's in the commitment, there's a sense that I can use it to just kind of whitewash, okay, just erase. And what I'm erasing is my negative reaction. You know, whatever is that piece that comes up for me, it's when I have a little room around it, and I'm just not totally gripped in it, but I have enough room around it to not be immersed in it, let's say, as reactionary. So I guess the question I have is one, how do I get the greatest opportunity? How is it, you know, here's whatever that arises in me that stems from whatever judgments or thoughts I have, whatever perception is judgment. So I'm perceiving, I'm judging, here's my thought, and what I'm caught up in is the emotional reaction. And the emotional reaction, all that happens like that, drives the response, usually, unless I have space. So is it to just whitewash all that, those feelings with a nice idea? Or is there opportunity in that experience?
My answer to that, Tom, and incidentally, I would like to precede my remarks by saying, of all of the people I've ever known during the time I've been studying this course, you are one of the most forgiving that I've ever met. Truly, honestly, forgiving. My response is, it could be either way that best suits you in the moment. I don't believe there is any given way, so to speak, that is better than another given way, as long as we take whichever one to the God self and say, here is where I am in this moment. Here is where I am. Meet me here.
Yeah. That's the piece for me, Tom, right there, is meet me here, because in meeting me here is loving me even with this reaction.
Exactly.
And so I don't
that.
crucify myself. There's the
Yes.
opportunity.
That is the opportunity.
And I'm finding that process challenging, to be in the sweat of the reaction and asking. to create the space to even love myself here.
A couple of days ago, I was in one of those snits, and I went to Brother, and I said, what the hell am I going to do? I'm just constantly bouncing in and out of this awareness. And he says, each time you do, remember, and again he reminded me about, you're either experiencing the love of God or nothing's happening. But then he said, look, each time, just remind yourself, if it is at any given moment, or ever has been in your past, your intention to love your brother, then just remember this. It is always possible to love the dreamer if you disregard his dream.
Mm. Mm.
Now, what does that really mean for us? To disregard his dream?
Behavior is irrelevant.
Isn't that what we all struggle with? Isn't that what we struggle with when we say, but wait a minute, I'm in and out, I'm back and forth, I'm never consistent. We're struggling with just that one issue. Who cares if it's not real? Who cares how many times we bounce back and forth? The only thing that's important is that in one of those moments, when we're bouncing off the wall, we run into God.
Thank God.
And it's over. But we make such a big deal out of it. We are so accustomed to the rewards of guilt. You know?
Yeah, I do know. It's
When I look at what's going on, and I don't care who it is in the government that seems to be creating such problems for these refugee people, I just feel myself start to rise up. How many times have I arisen to that bait? And how many times will I? And the answer is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Unless I have changed that story into something real, it doesn't matter. Is this a novel approach or what?
Is this nothing real can be threatened?
Can you hear that?
What'd you say, Lee?
Nothing real can be threatened.
Yeah. Right.
Nothing unreal exists.
Herein lies the peace of God.
Mm-hmm.
Herein lies the peace of God. Not once you get it right. We don't need to go there.
So at some level, there's a playing out of perfection.
Say it again, please.
At some level, there's a playing out of perfection. My perception shows me one thing, but there's something perfectly planned that's playing out.
What would we not accept? Yeah.
Right, and so it really is looking beyond the dream and feeling into another.
It is taking in the reality, Tom, of recognizing that all of these times that he has called it a dream, it's only that. It is just that. And we can't make it something else.
As hard as we try.
And boy, do we try.
Yeah.
I think for me the paradox is, since nothing is happening, what's happening?
That's the ego that has to see something happening. And that's what that is.
Yeah.
Spirit doesn't need to see anything happening, but the ego's gotta see something happening because it has friends and enemies, rights and wrongs, and ups and downs, and all that stuff.
And it wants to figure all this out.
And it needs to figure it out.
Which means it has to have a future.
Yep.
And that future has to have something better.
Yep.
So you're already caught in the conundrum.
But not better for everybody, better for me. You know?
If there's nothing real happening, there would be nothing to judge and only the love.
That's
Would
right.
that be the simplicity of it?
That's it, right there.
Easier said than done.
Well, the nothing to judge is where we stumble. Because, you know, we would like to think there's nothing to judge except that. You know, we can't even finish the sentence before we see that.
Lots of exceptions.
Yep.
Why do you suppose Brother prefaced all of this information coming to Helen by telling her this? This is what we're going to do here. We're going to learn that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. That's what we're going to do. How many times do we remember that when we judge and we get angry with ourselves for judging, that's the whole purpose of the judgment.
Now, when we get angry with ourselves for judging, we're judging. That's the craziness of it.
So kind of a conundrum there.
But now, look, ask yourselves another question, because this is key. This is really, really key. Could you live with yourself without feeling guilty?
It would have to be capital S.
See,
It would have to be capital S.
Self.
Self is the biggest.
My biggest self?
Yeah.
there aren't too many of us who can answer that question that we could, in fact, look forward to a life of not judging ourselves. Yeah. How about that?
You know,
How do you, if you feel inadequate,
well,
essentially all the time, which is this, how could you not feel guilty about that?
well, we think there's only knowing and not knowing,
Yeah.
but there's also undecidedness.
Yeah.
And if we live in undecidedness, then we're continuously open to learning new knowingnesses.
Yeah.
I might have used a couple extra S's there, but you get the idea. And I think that's where that openness, if it's present, we're at peace. If it's not present, we're at war. You know, we got to get them.
I
One of
think,
sorry, love, go ahead.
I'm just quickly going to say, I think every one of us here has been willing to open our minds to something grander, more beautiful, more loving. And we're all just in different levels of working,
Now,
and we're all
we
doing
are.
this. And it's all perfect.
Whenever I find myself asking the question that you just asked, Sam, which is frequently, I might say, Brother always reminds me, in a very subtle way, of when the last time was that I depended upon my God self instead of my ego. What grander gift could a father have given us than a bridge to get from where we think we are to where we actually are? Guaranteed.
Safely in heaven.
And how many times do I use it? How many times do I, when I have a problem or when something is in my face, do I say, God self, you better handle this. I don't think I can do it the way I need to do it right now. How about you? Do you run into this?
I did it last week.
Tell us.
When that was, well, I did share it last week when these two women were kind of going at each other. And I walked into the bathroom
Right.
and I said, Holy Spirit, show me what to do here. And that's when I went back in the room, put my arm around this lady, and she literally just came right into me.
Now, honey, what if we did that every single time? What if all of us did that every single time we had an issue? Anytime anything comes up, inwardly, in our mind, we just say, God help me.
Why do we have to wait for an issue?
Well,
Yeah.
that's an interesting question.
Yeah. Especially if there's... yeah.
Remember that little thing I had where the mother comes into the kitchen and she goes, and the daughter says, "What's the matter, Mom?" And the mom says, "I thought I had a problem." What if we lived our life? If we were in communion with our God self, would there ever be a problem?
And could we stand it?
Well, the ego couldn't, but if all of a sudden that became, isn't that the bridge that we're working on
That's
crossing?
the bridge. That's the bridge.
Because my willingness to let go of my unworthiness, my guilt, is the only thing that's really, I think, in my way of just grabbing the hand that's there and taking the walk across the bridge.
Is that called forgiveness?
And the forgiveness is of this one.
Yeah.
Laying down the one who sees themselves as not worthy.
Can I just, I have trouble sometimes with talking about, the ego doesn't like this, the ego doesn't like that. Don't, go past the ego, go here. But I want to take this journey with the ego, and maybe I'm wrong in doing this, but I feel comfortable doing it this way, and this is helpful for me to do it this way. And giving the ego permission not to fight me, to work with me, to help me. And so therefore I don't feel like it's a separation, that I'm here, it's there, that eventually I am going to be whole and together. But if I say, oh, ego, you would take me here, I want to go here, it's like, okay, if I need to go through the ego right now to get past what the ego is feeling, and then we'll be in a different spot to go in a different direction, that's the way I have to do it.
I think that's a beautiful way to do it, honey.
I agree.
Go ahead.
I agree with that because the ego has been such a big part of my life that
No, really?
I mean it's been like
Well, that makes you unique.
that when I look at something now, it's like, because I am coming at it from my ego, the greatest thing I think that I ever learned that encompasses everything I've learned from the Course and everything else is that when there is no self, there is no problem. So when the self, and I only deal with one self because I know my true self is who I am. So when my predominant self can be done away with, and I'm in the moment, then there I am. So that makes it easy. To me, so much that I've learned and read is kind of complicated. We come at it from this page. This page says this, but if I can come at it from what's been so predominant and say, it's a simple statement like no self, no problem. Because when there is no self, there is no problem. and that recognizes my ego being the culprit. So, to me, it's a very simple process, or very simple seeing, and it allows me now these days to just be in the moment as much as I can. So when I look at Donald Trump, it's like, hey, this your ego, your conditioning is what's causing you to be that way. So I can't have a problem with that, because my problem is the same kind of problem. It's just at a different degree, or different conditioning than his, but it's the same problem. So anyway, I just want to say that I agree with what you're saying.
I think that probably what's bringing that up to you is the Holy Spirit.
Oh yeah.
To remind you to say no self, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Every morning I use what we call the third step prayer in recovery. It's basically, I turn everything over to you. And during the day, I often hear, this isn't real. It just comes into my mind, this isn't real. Well, if I'm turning everything over every morning to this Holy Spirit, shouldn't I maybe believe that answer is coming from Him now and then?
Yeah.
And when I hear this isn't real, I think it is coming from the Holy Spirit. Because I never thought that before.
And it's just like, with me, the more I can simplify something, the easier it is for me to live it. So those 4 words is something that's like my mantra. When I feel it slipping, and I coming from my ego, it's like, okay, no self, no problem. And it works. Even if I see a problem, if I don't see it as a problem, it's not a problem. Just one day it might seem like a problem, but it's how I look at it. It's how who's seeing it? Who is looking? It's a very deep, basic Buddhist teaching. Who is looking? Is my ego looking, or my who I am looking?
I think it's perhaps even deeper than that. I think you've fallen into the space where you can relate, are willing to relate to the love of God.
When I heard that, it was like somebody just hit me between the eyes. I mean, all this stuff I've been listening and reading, it just comes down to that.
So the words are really irrelevant anymore.
Yeah.
You know your place. You know how to be there.
Mm-hmm. It's not there yet, but I can be there whenever I want to be. It's not something I'm seeking or looking forward to. It's something that is here right now in this moment, and it's just I love it. It's a beautiful place to be. So anyway,
Who else?
The Course asks us, would you rather be right or happy? And there's so much of a message to me in that question. Would you rather be right or happy? Do I have to answer?
It occurs to me, Jim, that when I say to my God self, when I turn to my God self and say, help me, I can be both.
Yeah.
Right and happy.
Happy and right, yeah.
it's like the other day when I related about when I was cussing out the person who was tooting the horn behind me, And I remember Wayne Dyer said once, just something you remember, just say, you're right about that. Whenever you're dealing with anybody in there, you have a confrontation, you're right about that. No big deal. You're right about that. I don't have to argue with you. If you do come from there, there's never anything to be.
Yeah, that's
Like
great.
I said, would you rather be happy or right?
I sometimes hear too in recovery people say, how free do you want to be?
How what?
How free do you want to be? Isn't that a great question? How free do you
Yeah.
want to be?
I did something a couple of days ago. In the past, I have looked in the mirror and looked in my eyes, but something really, I don't know why I did this, but I was walking by my mirror in the closet, and I really looked into my eyes, deeper than I have ever looked. And I said, "Hello, God. I love you."
That's lovely, honey.
It was deeper than it's ever been.
So who was looking in the mirror? Who was looking in the, yeah? Who was looking?
Someone once said, if you want to see what God looks like, go look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That just,
Yeah.
Or take a look around this table.
yeah, same thing.
Yeah, it's the cool thing about doing that is there is no separation. You know, we're all one and the same. So you are looking at yourself, your true self.
So let me bring us back to where we began this conversation. Is there something, anything at all, that still is in your mind that would not allow you to see the Holy Child of God in both the refugee and the government officials?
Maybe something that is not. I think something that Kat said about Laurel last week, and we never did get to finish that, because Laurel is communicating at this point from wherever she is, wherever her being is, and the beauty of that is that, of course, we all want to awaken in this lifetime. But if in the case that someone doesn't, then there is a process that every being goes through, I believe, between lifetimes. And so he said it seemed like she was in a classroom.
Well, that was my interpretation.
Well-
That's not what it said. But that's what it felt like to me.
Yeah, and that is certainly a valid consideration. And the point I'm getting to is that there have been accounts of souls making the transition between lifetimes where they were actually went under hypnosis, and it's pretty easy. It's pretty compelling when you study that, because like where Laurel is communicating from right now could very well be a classroom. And of course, like I said, we all want to awaken in this lifetime, but it's really interesting to study this because it makes makes the fear of death just gone, which it should be anyway, because we know that we're eventually going to wake up, whether this time around or not. And there's not any kind of punishment going on or anything like that. But like I said, there are a couple of books that I've read recently that are very interesting, and where hypnosis has actually, I think, proven what does happen to a being, to a soul. And if anybody's interested in them, I can let you know what the names and authors are. I'm not trying to be blasphemous or anything like that. here, but I have read a lot of stuff lately that's been pretty compelling. Oh, you're saying?
Forgive me for breaking in. I'm brand new to the group, but are you familiar with Robert Schwartz?
No.
Okay, never mind. I really don't want to take any more of the group. I just want to know if you were coming from.
The one that Dolores Cannon was the author of one, and Michael Newton. And I have the books right here, but I just wanted to bring that up because I read a lot, and a lot of it's been very beneficial. It's helped me see things that I didn't see before, just reading the course and reading some other things. So it's pretty interesting. Anyway, that's it.
If you had to, I'm sorry, Debbie. Finish.
No, I'm finished. Yeah.
If you had to elucidate one reason or one feeling that would stand in your way of accepting all of the parties involved in this current situation, what would it be? One thing.
That it's real.
That it's real. And what does that mean? What does that mean when we are told it's not real?
That it's the way of the ego world and how people function with various bodily needs or addictions but God did not do that. I think this is one of the things that has become really clear to me through studying the Course, is that God does not do this. He does not cause these things to happen. And there's when it's possible to remove the thought of things that are happening and to move into the God realm of peace and love and comfort, instead of the involvement in all of these various ego conflicts and various things that human beings have created. There's where I have a little trouble with saying it isn't real. If I went down to the border right now and heard those little children crying, to me it would be very real. But going beyond that, all these
things we need to
things
deal
have
with, honey.
Pardon?
This is what I'm trying to deal with here today, right now. Because there is an answer. There is a truthful, real answer. Talk to us, Thomas.
The fundamental, there's a couple fundamentals going on here, and of course it always goes back to everything in my mind leads us back to our internal guidance and that which resonates as truth when we get there. And we've all been there, I think, at some level at some time. We've also been where we think we're getting it, but we're not sure, and it's kind of a borderline thing, and it seems to be thrown back at us to make the decision ourselves again. But I think when that's happening, I think it's really saying, you need to clarify your question. And the other fundamental that comes to mind is simply that we're confusing forgiveness. And we're thinking we have to forgive. It's elementary. We all read it. We're still thinking we have to forgive something that actually is happening. Instead of turning it over and asking the question, I don't understand what this means. Can you tell me what this means? Not, this looks horrible. What do you think? Just a simple, I don't understand that. I don't understand why this is here. And then if I have empathy to say, please accept this with it, and if it can help go anywhere, because I don't know where it should go. Because I don't know the script, and all the other scripts, and the scripts within the scripts, and the diversions, and you make a decision, and now you get a new script, and now Holy Spirit has a script, and now ego has a script. It's all forcing us back into our internal guidance all the time. The overriding other principle is, at some level, we're going to have to bring into our awareness that our reality is looking at the journey from the end and watching us go through this. Can we accept that? That it's over. And all we can do is delay. And that goes back to our internal guidance if we want to take the shortcut, the straight line through the center of the spiral.
What's coming to my mind is beware of the temptation to see anyone treated unfairly. You know, the quote from the Course says, beware of the temptation to see yourself treated unfairly.
To see yourself unfairly treated.
Yeah.
So,
My question, whenever I get all wound up, is what part of this dream, capital letters underlined, do I think is real? And immediately, if I go there, wait, it's a dream? Well, no part of any dream is reality. It's just a silly dream. And then I'm at ease again.
However, yeah, it's just like a famous, Gary Renard is one of my favorite authors, and one thing that he said really stuck with me is that the truth can be heard in the dream, so that this being our classroom to learn the lessons we need to learn is why we're here. So we don't want to take any of it personally. You know, it is what it is. You know, my tendency is to try to save people and save the world and all that kind of stuff. I learned a long time ago that it ain't going to happen. You know, if I'm lucky if I can save myself. But you know, we want to help, we want to save, but it's everybody has to be responsible for their own lives.
how long would it take us to change the world? Seriously.
1 second.
If I had a thought right now that nothing was wrong, how long would it take to change the world?
It's kind of, to me, that's kind of analogous to coming out of a dream. I had a very vivid dream last night, and the moment I woke up, there's kind of an instant recognition that none of that was real. And so, as an analogy, I think apparently that's the kind of experience you could have by realizing that the dream that we're in now, the waking dream, we come to the point where we're going to have that sudden recognition. None of that was real.
Yeah.
But what kind of really intrigued me as kind of listening to all this is that I think we all have moments of grace. And there is ever-present grace, but what I felt I've experienced sometimes is those moments of grace, and during those moments I feel less inside of me, because it usually has to do with some other human being.
And you said it.
And the hope that I can contribute something to that person. And I can get it out of my mind.
When the Course, Brother tells us in the Course, that grace is the willingness to see the love of God amidst a world of perception.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think,
But
Tom,
what does that mean? It means it's all up to me to just see you the way you are.
isn't that circling you right back to your question that you're putting before us, this stand, what could get in the way? You know, that in these apparent, what looks like traumatic experiences, what it does is it really pulls into question what the Course is asking me to do. And what T.G. was just saying so eloquently is to hold my perception in suspension and listen.
Yeah.
And this, to live by another source.
So when the question arises in your mind, can I truly forgive? The first thing that should follow that question is, am I willing to forgive myself? Because I am the only one. I am the only one that I can forgive, and that it makes any sense to try to forgive.
And need to forgive.
I mean, there's no forgiveness other than yourself because nobody ever did anything to you. I mean,
That's right.
How many sons of God are there?
yeah, nobody did anything.
So is there any reason at all that we can't bring healing to this situation that we're talking about? This isn't about being able to love Donald Trump despite what he's done. This isn't about that. This is about each one of us being able to look inside and say, am I willing, just this, am I willing to see the child of God right here, right now? Just that.
You know, I can look around this room, and I don't care what any of you have done. I'd have no problem forgiving any one of you. Why is it so difficult to forgive myself?
Because you think it happened. Because you think whatever you can't forgive yourself for actually happened. You know, Sam talks about waking up from that vivid dream,
Right.
and realizing right away it didn't happen. But we're told over and over again we're living in a dream now, but we don't think we can change anything. Isn't that strange? Because on our sleeping dreams, we realize right away, oh, I can let all of that go now. If something needs to remain, I suppose it'll be there in my subconscious. What we're being asked to do, I think, is to recognize we're in one now. And it tells us we are so deeply ingrained in it because it's our world that we made that we can't get out of it because we've convinced ourselves it's real for all the decades we've lived. And we made a wonderful device to prove it to us called the body with all its senses and a brain with memories. It all is just too real. We can look at a dream when we sleep and say, well, I jumped from here to there. That's impossible. That's why I know it's not real. But our hanging on to longitudinal time, to past, present, and future, makes us believe it's impossible to do the same thing here. So we don't believe that miracles can all of a sudden move us from here to there. Because, no, this goes this way. Only because we're holding it there in our minds. And we're not trusting enough that something within us that's waiting for us to acknowledge it can move us to places we don't think we can go or can't even imagine.
Remind us again of what a miracle is, Tom.
A miracle is a movement within the overall temporal order, jumping up that spiral vertically to a place where we couldn't really foresee but had an open mind to be able to go to. It moves us along that timeline of our world and our life and everything else closer to our trusting God. Every time a little miracle happens, the God self or the Holy Spirit or Christ, it gets us closer when we trust in it. The problem is we get the ego involved with some little things we think we want, or big things we think we want, and we don't allow for the miracle to happen. We still think we know what's in our best interest. And it's all about faith and trust and the idea of moving through this script. It tells us that it seems to be a paradox that the mind has already determined when our revelation that the Father and the Son are one has already been determined when that happens. But then it seems a paradox that it says, well, we want you to take this route because it'll basically hurry you along. Those don't seem to add up. What's the factor that doesn't add up? Linear time. We jump through miracles. So maybe there is a time that's already determined, as it says in Lesson 158, that it's all over. And we're taking a journey that we are on, that we don't realize we've taken, and we're looking at it from the end. From that mind is the connection to the guidance that moves us faster and faster and faster and faster. I have to go back to the idea that if we didn't have free will to delay, it would all be robotic and God would be just shining itself on. I want to see myself rising to my greatness, and I want to have it. So I'll sign you this, and you this, and you this, and you this, and do it. Unless they're free to say, I don't want to do it because I don't see why I should, or who you are, or what you are. Another way to look at it is God experiencing itself from the standpoint of what seems to be without itself, which is coming into itself. What is out of itself can be called the crucifixion of every fragment of mind that's just screaming for not knowing what. What brings God back into seeing itself is the resurrection. Is what we read last week on page 330 of the workbook. Every time a child of God returns, I am reborn. I am renewed. Went further than I was planning to on that one time.
Would it also be correct to say that forgiveness is to see with Christ's vision, in short, which is to see the real. When you see the real, the unreal is undone.
Yeah, what it calls seeing the face of Christ in everyone you look upon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question in response to your question. Can we look at the refugee situation and see it as being unreal? And I associate that with me still being pretty much convinced that I'm a body. I pinch myself.
Right.
I hurt, therefore I am myself.
Right.
And I'm asking you, is it possible to look at that situation, believe that it's not real, and believe that I'm in a body?
Yes. Yes, it is. You only have to do one thing. Ask the God Self to see it for you. To see with your perception being undone. In other words, each of us has decided how we're going to see this story unfold. And that's what we call perception. That just plays on and on. But the God Self can take that view and show you how to see, for instance, that the child who seemed to be abandoned was actually experiencing an opportunity to recognize that he was completely loved. How would I know that? How could I ever arrive at that kind of a conclusion? I couldn't. There's no way. But if I could see through the eyes that recognized that the body, this perception, this world, that I see functioning as me, was only functioning as a character that I have created and had nothing to do with me. Now I'm free.
So would that be a holy instant?
That certainly would be a holy instant.
At that instant, would I be in this body?
Maybe, maybe not. It's irrelevant. The body will always serve whatever purpose we give it, Raj. So we can have it or not have it, it's irrelevant. In fact, I am even cautioned by sometimes my feeling that I should be willing to give up the body. I don't know. That's the simple truth. I don't know what's best for me. I don't know if it would be best for me to let go of my body right now or to continue to function within it. Quite honestly, I don't know.
That kind of brings to mind to me is if we are kind of like on a perfect path, and it's then is the whole experience then thereby meaningful? And I think you addressed this before. I'd like to hear you readdress that, or either one of you has, because that's the way the logic appears to me. Is that it has to be meaningful, or the prodigal son is a meaningful experience.
Yeah, we could talk about that one a long time, but my belief is that it could not be meaningless. I think it's meaningless to stay here now, knowing what we know. But I think the idea of having the journey could not have been meaningless. Because one of the things is what I in a short version of it, I think the living God is the Son of God experiencing constant resurrection from apparent crucifixion, to show over and over again that the crucifixion is an unreal event. And the only reason that the resurrection is a real event is because the love involved in it, which was not involved in the crucifixion. Why would that be necessary? Go ahead.
I'm just saying that's a beautiful distinction.
The Course makes that distinction about the crucifixion, that it isn't real, but the resurrection is. Now, how can our minds in linear time grasp that?
But that's the same as saying love is real and fear is not?
It is.
Yeah, that's
it is.
And fear only exists in linear time.
And we can deny that by our belief system, and we have. And that's where we are, and that's why we're going through this. But that always then bounces right back to the question throughout all of this that hits me in the face. What would you rather have? What do you want?
That's all. That's what's hitting us in the face is seeing what we want.
Yeah.
Yes.
Damn.
I was thinking in my mind what I was going to talk about next week, and it's going to be along the lines of what if there is no God?
That's a bookmark. We'll hold that.
I would think about the word want, and it automatically applies to something I don't have, because if I had it, I wouldn't need to want it.
Yes.
So wanting seems to be the way gosh, can I make this, which is right. Wanting seems to be the way in which I reject myself.
Yes, I think so, Jim.
I'm sorry. That's a good analysis. I can't think of one that would be any more appropriate than that.
And so to give up wanting is to just embrace what is. I mean, that's all that would be left, right?
Well, can we see how it's... Go ahead.
The thing that distracts us so much is that we think when we say, just by accepting what is, that means accepting all of the strife, the pain, the sorrow, and so forth.
But that's
not the point. If the mind is in acceptance of itself, if the mind is in going through the process of accepting itself, there will be no pain. There will be no suffering.
Capital S.
There's no conflict.
The big S.
That's the only mind there is. You see? But the ego says, well, how could I be accepting of all of that? That's what I'm trying to get rid of. And the point is that if you were accepting yourself, you would be rid of it. It's only because the mind is in conflict with itself that it sees these things we call a world. Who is there to attack us if we accepted ourselves?
See, that was the original split. There was no wanting until the mind said, I want something else. It started with the split mind wanting the separation. So now we have to want to undo the separation from the split mind.
From the split mind.
Through the ego, or
Yes.
through the final realization by the split mind that the ego cannot offer it anything, and that it was better off with the Father, but now it knows why, experientially. And that's where the purpose is of it, is the experiential part of it. I know now why the idea of separation was not what I hoped it might be.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah, right.
So I'm doing all of this for you.
Thank you.
I'm going through this for your sake.
Oh, God.
Exactly.
Carpenter, is there? Do you think we're having a challenge in coming to this place of taking the stand of seeing the child of God in both the children and the government? You've brought us numerous times to this, and we get just like a chung. It's intriguing to see.
It's kind of like, it's not an either or, it's a all.
It's all.
You know, which human being in all the world is not a creation of God? We know the answer to that. I mean, we think we know the answer. Everyone is. Oh, you mean even those guys? And we'll go off down that path of those guys. But the truth of the matter is, everyone is God expressing itself. And it's kind of like, but there's parts I don't approve of. And there's my pain.
What is it, of all the 8 billion people on the planet, we see that, and that's, okay, if it bleeds, it leads, in the news, so we're all concerned about that, but there's so much stuff just like that going on everywhere in the world that we don't see. What about that?
What if nothing's going on, we're just dreaming it?
Okay, so, but we make a big deal out of this, and not so much of a big deal about the stuff we don't see.
What if all of this that's playing out in the play
Yeah.
is simply to have each of the 8 billion characters in their little spark of life to drive them back to asking, there must be a better way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's a process for each one. And as they all come together, it becomes God resurrecting the idea of God.
I had this sense when the planes flew into the World Trade Center, there was just a moment there. It was so intense that the mind stopped, and there was a second where everybody would almost ask that question now. This can't be real. There must be another way. And it just felt like there was this moment. If we could just come to that.
The crazier the world gets, the more people are going to try to turn from one ego thing to another ego thing. When it keeps getting crazier and the ego things have no possible answer that could be a resolution that's satisfactory or change the word to loving, every single character is going to have to go back to the actor and say, I don't want this. Show me reality. This isn't real. This is a nightmare. The miracle, if we knew we were in a dream every time we seemed to wake up in the morning from our other dreams, then what couldn't happen? Then what would be the order of difficulty in solving all of this? And when we get a group like this together, like Tom's doing right now, saying, focusing all of us together with the same purpose, the strength of that recognition of one purpose is so powerful. Tom's experienced it before, and with groups, and sending this one purpose of a loving unity to where it can be transformed and placed where it belongs, where it will do the most good. Maybe I'm misreading what you're trying to do with us, Tom, but it sounds like that's where we seem to be going here.
Oh, he exposed it last. I want to share something with you in that regard. A couple of mornings ago in my meditation, I had the fleeting thought, kind of passed through my mind. My goodness, isn't there something I could do that would seemingly overcome all of these tremendous odds of everything that needs to be fixed? It just looks like an impossible situation. And I hear Brother say, now relax. And he didn't say anything else. But I began to feel coming into my mind the experience of the universe, what I call it the universe, mind of God, whatever. Before the Big Bang, when everything was just absolutely whole and peaceful normal. Everything was perfect. And it was then, it was like, there was this, what the Course calls, tiny mad idea. Just a little gremlin of a thought popped through. Everything shattered. Everything just shattered into a million billion pieces. And I watched all this, and I became aware that I have the choice and the opportunity to be on either side of that moment. And that was so profound because it really taught me that no matter how complex, how complicated, how overwhelmingly powerful and conflictual this world seems to be, there is a place in my mind that remembers it before all of that happened. And so suddenly I realized I didn't need to deal with all of this. I only needed to deal with one thing, one idea. Which side of that moment do I want to be on?
Seeing perfecting sin or seeing what's wrong? It comes down to that, really.
That's the only thing it came down to, Jim.
What's wrong? If we want to live in a what's wrong world, we're not going to be happy campers. But if we're going to...
And all of that stuff then seems to manifest itself. But it was like, if I watched it happen in reverse, it all came back together and there was nothing but this beautiful, harmonious, perfectly loving thought. And it was all right there, and I could be here, or I could be here.
Is this Rumi's field?
So,
Is this Rumi's field?
I'm sure that must be exactly what he experienced at that moment. The field, yes. There is a field.
It seems like what you're describing is when you look through the mind of God, not through the mind of you.
There isn't any distinction, Jim.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
This picture just came to my mind of when you see a picture go this way and then reverse it, how it, when you talked about, how it's split all over, and then when you reverse that picture, how it all comes back together. On the screen, you've seen.
I didn't realize it, Teddy, but when I had this experience in my meditation, I remembered later that I had watched a Nova program, just probably the one you're talking about,
Yeah.
where everything seemed to go that way. And at the time that I watched it, thought went through my mind like, why do that? Why do that? When we awaken, what are we going to awaken to? A bright new world? Or are we going to awaken to the world that's always been?
I think we're going to awaken to better vision that it's all perfection.
Yeah.
Changed mind.
The tiny mad idea, right, was when...
You know what the tiny mad idea is, incidentally?
Yeah.
It's so simple. Who am I?
Yeah, no, it was when we decided.
How can you ask, who am I? You can't. What's the one thing you have to know above all else? It's who and what you are. You can't escape that. None of us can. So when that one tiny mad idea, I wonder who I am. In all of this, I wonder who I am. That's a tiny mad idea.
Yeah, the self.
What you said, though, there, Tom, in all of this, to me, what I'm hearing is, who am I in relationship? What I'm hearing you say is why the Father created a Son.
Maybe if we stopped asking, who am I, and we began to ask, what am I, we might move closer to.
Or just to say, I am.
Yeah.
Or just say,
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
I wonder how many times more complex I make this whole awakening process.
So you're the one.
I want you to take that.
You did it.
Yeah.
Just
Your fault.
Just think for one moment. What would happen if we could convince ourselves not to judge ourselves for screwing up? Just that. That's all we have to do. Nothing's wrong. Well, but could I do that? Well, who do you think screwed up by thinking there was something wrong? Was that somebody else?
No. Let's get after that guy.
Yeah. What is there for me to do to awaken myself to the truth than just to say, Father, here I am.
The Course tells us gratitude is the way I walk to God. That's what the Course says.
You know, Tom, am I comfortable in this moment to have, to totally, there's nothing to change. There's just this total acceptance. This as it is right here is perfection itself. Can I have the gratitude? Well, because now I have no future I need to move into. I can truly rest right here. And to truly rest right here is not to judge that there's anything other than this moment here.
That's what I meant, Tom. When you have that recognition, you see the so-called Big Bang, and you say, wait a minute. I saw it before. I don't need to see that side of it. I see this side of it, and it's done.
And rest, and allow me to rest right here. And allow me to rest right here as
right here.
In that completeness. I seek no longer.
So let's ask ourselves the question again. The one question of healing that we need to ask.
What's that?
We need to, I said, let's ask ourselves again the one question of healing that we need to ask. Am I willing now to see the Holy Child of God wherever I look? In both the refugees and the government, wherever, just to see that. Is there something that still persists that would keep us from doing that? I don't think so, not in this moment.
If we could do that, we could look at any situation the same way.
Or perhaps, Brian, if we could do that, there won't be any more
No more situations.
situations.
No problem.
Just joy.
Well, why not? Why not?
I was watching a show on YouTube the other day with Eckhart Tolle and a Hindu teacher who calls himself Sadhguru. And they were talking about fear. And Sadhguru said, see, everything in this world is a stepping stone to help you get to a higher level. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. If that works, please do it.
So join you in that, taking that stand. Tom?
Thank you.
It just occurred to me that we're talking about higher level. What's wrong with this level? Might be a better question for me to ask myself. Because
So we're gonna do
if there's only God, then there's only perfection. Why am I judging? Who do I think I am?
God. Where's there to get to then?
I was thinking about Monday, dance was canceled, and I was all dressed, ready to go. So when I got the phone call, so I said, "Oh God, what do we want to do today?" I had the whole day. I had the most beautiful day. It just, and then I got some new flowers, and I had lunch out, and everybody I ran into was just, it was just a wonderful day. That's the way it should be.
It's the way it is, honey.
Yeah.
When we stay out of the way, that's the way it is.
So maybe I can share this poem that I wrote a few weeks ago that I shared before, but it seems appropriate, The Tiny Mad Idea.
Good, please do.
Into the mind of the Son of God crept the tiny mad idea. I think I'll dream up my own world, a veritable panacea. Oh, this will be such delicious fun. I'm going to separate from the one. And laying all the truth of who he is aside, he thought, I'll have a place to run and hide, a place where I'll escape God's wrath. And thus the Son of God forgot to laugh. And that dream world had such appeal, he came to believe that it was real. But now he's come to say, oh, for Christ's sake, I'm asleep, dreaming that I am awake. So maybe the time has come to let go of this mad scheme. Maybe the time has come to finally awaken from this dream.
That's so beautiful, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's one of my favorites.